GTA 3 came out more than 2 decades ago and is, in my opinion, the game that laid the foundation for what future iterations of Grand Theft Auto would build upon, from its mission structure, gameplay mechanics, and its level design. It is a game that was absolutely ahead of its time, but not so much that it doesn't have a heap of issues in 2026. This was the GTA game that crawled so the sequels could walk. One of the biggest peaks of this game is probably its map design. At the time, this was absolutely groundbreaking because you have to understand that back then some of the most impressive games were the original Sims and, Doom and Wolfenstein and stuff like that, which in their own regard are very, very good games. But this just took the open world gaming to a whole new level, and especially in the Grand Theft Auto franchise, where hardware limitations made it so that there was really only the top-down view in the first and second game, where now you were in the action right behind the protagonist, and it just created a whole new level of realism that at the time you had just not seen before. You really had to be alive back then to understand how incredible it was. I was, as a 90s kid, wasn't very old in 2001, but I remember my cousin playing it and just being absolutely mind blown at seeing something like this being possible on PlayStation 2 hardware, which I didn't know was possible at the time. It's split up between multiple sort of islands. In today's standard, the map is not very big. They obviously made it much bigger in modern maps, such as Grand Theft Auto 5, which is honestly not that modern anymore, but a much bigger map. But at the time, this was just a huge open world with multiple areas that you could explore and drive around in. It felt like you were actually in New York City, being a gang member and being a part of this underworld gang environment. It was just absolutely groundbreaking. The next peak is that GTA 3 is, for me, the first real GTA game, where the first two were more arcadey and, they feel like something you could play on, in one of the old arcades where you just throw in a coin and start playing a game. When GTA 3 just took it to a new level, that was starting to build on what GTA could really be. This huge open world where there's an actual storyline and you really there along with the protagonist exploring this world. And the fact that you can still, to this day, in some of their more modern games, in GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, you can still see a lot of the same gameplay elements from GTA 3 that they have just improved on and built upon. That is honestly a huge feather in the cap of what GTA 3 was able to do.
We were really sort of began to scratch the surface on how do we fill these worlds with content and how do we make that content interesting and make the content all interwoven. So as you start to mess with these systems, they also feel alive and interesting.
Then we also have that the world itself, again for its time, is just such a alive world. Today, the NPC behavior is very simple and sometimes ridiculous, but again at the time it was really impressive how gangs around the city actually reacted to what has happened in the story. So if you had in the storyline betrayed someone and they had obviously gotten angry with you, that meant that they would actually act aggressively towards you if you came into their area of the maps and start shooting at you or try to pull you out of the car. And it was just really cool to see that it wasn't just, sort of a static world, but instead it was a world that reacted to what you as the player was doing in the game. Also, radio stations mention stuff that happens in the story. There are these news stations that will mention this mission has just happened and this part of the city is now opened. It's just really cool for the time that when stuff happens in a game, you see the world react to it. And that was something I hadn't really seen before at the time. So one of my biggest pains about GTA 3 is that some of the gameplay elements have aged absolutely terrible. There are just things that should be in the game that just are not there, such as the ability to just maneuver your camera around. In some situations, there might be enemies behind you, in front of you, to your side, and it's so impossible to just move your camera in the direction that you want, because it's sort of a fixed camera angle in the original game, at least, that I played on PC, and that just makes some situations way harder and way more frustrating than they need to be. And there's just no reason for it to be like that, but that's just how it is in the original game. Also, you die really fast later in the game, where the enemies, they have very strong weapons that will kill you almost instantly if they get the jump on you. So the lack of any sort of cover mechanic in the game is really also a gameplay mechanic that has aged terrible. It is something that they added later on in games. I can't remember if it was San Andreas or GTA 4 that they implemented it, but there's just no reason for it to not be there. But then again, at this time in gaming, it wasn't something that, at least in third-person shooters, something that they utilized a lot. You can understand that, it wasn't something that they thought about, but it's so frustrating to try to maneuver some of these missions with just terrible camera angles and terrible movements from your character, where honestly you just die in certain situations that you probably shouldn't die, but just because of bad gameplay mechanics, when it should be because you made an actual mistake in the game. But it's just frustrating. And if you're going to play the game, there's just no way that you're not going to be experiencing this and it's not going to be pissing you off, because it's a huge problem in the game that unfortunately in some missions completely ruin the experience, and you just wish that they would have made the combat a little bit more smooth, especially because it's such a huge part of the game and almost every mission is gonna have some kind of gunfight in it.
Come to daddy, come here. Special delivery. Special delivery. Special delivery. What's up, Mom?
Another pain in the game is that cars feel like toys a little bit. They kind of lack some weight to them that future games manage to create better. They just sort of, at the smallest jumps, just fly around like toy cars all over the place. Like there's just zero weight to them, and just steering them around is honestly very difficult, because especially on a keyboard that I played on, I could imagine it's a lot easier on a controller, but if you just press the button, they will move so fast to the side. Like, once again, there's just no weight to them, so they just move around like these paper cars a lot, and they will blow up very easily. If they just go to their back, which they will do a lot, they will just instantly explode. And I'm pretty sure cars don't work like that they just explode as soon as something touches them or they're tipped over. But that's how they programmed the game. I'm sure they wanted to create a lot of explosions, but sometimes driving around in these cars is such a pain in the ass, because they just do not function as well as they do in later games. Another pain is that the mission design is absolutely outrageous. You are going to be doing missions that are slightly long, actually, and if you fail them at any time of the missions, there are no checkpoints, there are no instantly restarting the mission. You will lose all your weapons, you will have to go all the way back to a hospital if you die, or a police station if you're arrested, and if you just fail the mission, you will obviously be where you are, but you will have to drive all the way back still to where the mission started. And this can get really annoying if a mission is very hard. Honestly, I didn't experience the missions to be extremely hard, but some, especially the final mission, I lost a bunch of times, where I had to drive all the way back to where I started the mission and then drive over to where the actual mission takes place. And the most annoying part of it is that you lose all your weapons if you die or is arrested. So there's just a lot of wasted time that you shouldn't have to do. You shouldn't have to be driving all the way back to where the mission starts. I can accept that you have to do the entire mission again, honestly, but there's no reason that the mission shouldn't just restart and start playing from where you started the mission. Instead, you have to drive around the map a whole lot and just waste a lot of time on nothing, and that will get very annoying if you lose a mission a bunch of times, because you will end up spending almost more time just driving from where the mission starts to where the mission actually takes place, back to where you can eventually finish the mission. You will spend a lot of time doing that instead of just doing the actual mission. Then we have the protagonist, Claude. He is a completely silent protagonist, and back in the day of early video games, the silent protagonist was definitely more popular, and a game can certainly have a good story even though the protagonist does not say anything. Take a game like Half-Life, which is one of my favorite games, where there are great story elements even though Gordon Freeman never says a single word. I feel like in GTA 3 it does affect the story a little bit. I'm not sure if Claude is just meant to be a complete psychopath or what it's about, but he does a lot of outrageous things, obviously, and he never has an opinion about anything. He never objects to any ideas that people come up with. He just does it and is happy about it. And that falls a bit flat compared to later games where your character actually has a personality and has his own opinions and ideas about what he wants to do. Obviously, you do need to play a little bit as a psychotic character in these games because they do some horrible things and they are part of horrible gangs. But I feel like Claude falls a bit flat because he just doesn't give a shit about anything. It's not a big pain about the game, it's just I wish he would just have a voice actor, to be honest. I don't like when the protagonist says too much, which is honestly a problem with modern games, that the character just talks way too much for no reason, and it would have been nice if he just had a little bit of a personality, and especially because it would make sense that you would have an opinion about some of the stuff that you do in a world like Grand Theft Auto. Also, one of the things that I thought was peak about the game is that the gang members around the town react to you as the player. The thing about it is that when you get later on in the game, it's like every gang in the entire fucking game are just out for you. Every corner you go to, there's gonna be some new gang members that are trying to pull you out of the car or just shoot at you, and it doesn't matter which car you're driving. Even if you're driving one of their cars, they're just instantly locking onto you and trying to kill you. And sometimes in GTA games I just want to drive around and just chill a bit, but you can't do that in GTA 3, later on in the game at least, because everywhere it's just World War III with gangs fighting each other and trying to kill you. And as cool as it is to begin with, because at the beginning it's mostly just you working for the Italian mafia against the triads, where they clearly have their area and you have your area, but later on it's just too many places where they're trying to kill you, and you just end up thinking like, does the police in this city even care? Because it's like the police, they will react to stuff that you do, but they do not care about gang members having a war on every street corner. You will never see police caring much about it, and it just gets ridiculous later on in the game. Well, GTA 3 has missions that are still very fun to play here 25 years later, and a map that still has a lot of atmosphere. It is overall a game that has badly outdated gameplay mechanics that make it a frustrating mess, and the story is a pretty simple get revenge quest that doesn't get anywhere near the stakes of what future games manage to create. Overall, I think the game is a slightly more painful experience than a peak experience. Have you played GTA 3? If so, I would love to hear about your opinion in the comments below. If you like this video, please subscribe and give the video a like, it helps me out so much. Take care, and I hope to see you for the next video.
Forgive me, but I didn't do anything wrong, so sue me. If you think I changed your happy life, forget me. If you don't think a friend is right, your enemy has always been your innocence. You're sweet, you're shy, you must admit